Hello, my name is Pau Garcia. I'm the product manager for Red Hat Lightspeed Cost Management. Today I want to talk to you about our resource optimization capabilities and our cost management plugin for Developer Hub. Most users, when they think about Red Hat Cost Management, think about cost. Maybe they think about metering, how much I have used of this resource or that resource, how much did that incur in currency terms, like is it $5,000? Is it $5? What is it, right? Is it like 20 CPU core hours? Is it 10 gigabytes of disk space? What did I consume? But Cost Management does more than that. In addition to our cloud and OpenShift on-premise and on the cloud metering and costing capabilities and OpenShift virtualization also, we import all the tags, labels, hierarchical units, cost categories, all that from the cloud from OpenShift. We do the cost distribution and the metering according to some predefined strategies, and you can add your custom costs and decide on what strategy you want to use. I recommend that you watch our cost models video, and with that we build our reports. And with those cost reports, typically what you're going to do is you're going to send the bill to your internal or external customers, and you're going to tell them, Mr. Customer, Mr. Line of Business Manager, the cost of your CRM application or your website application or your ERP application for this month is $10,000, $5,000, whatever it is. And then they are going to react often with, well, you're mistaken. That cannot be true. My application cannot be that expensive. Then you give them the itemization of those costs, because in cost management you can get, you used 122 CPU core hours, you used 30 gigabytes of disk space, you used this GPU NVIDIA A100 for 27 hours, and then your fair share of the overhead cost is this much, and that's something that your users cannot argue against. It's like a phone bill itemization. Then the next thing that you are going to be asked is, please make my application run cheaper, right? For that, we introduced the resource optimization for OpenShift feature a while ago, and I want to talk to you about that today. This is cost management. We see the cost, we see the code confidence, we see the infra cost for all my clouds. I can see my OpenShift costs here for projects, for clusters. The interesting thing is that I have a tab here, and this integrated into the namespaces and the clusters and the nodes, which is the efficiency and their optimizations. The efficiency tells me how efficient I am, if I am any efficient in the first place. It tells me, for instance, at the cluster level, if I look at this, it tells me, look, globally across all of your clusters, you're 49% CPU efficient with potential savings of 2,600 almost dollars, and you are 115% memory efficient, which is actually a bad thing, by the way, because you don't want to be, in the case of memory, which is a non-compressible resource, you don't want to go over 100%. So there's that $0 of potential savings to realize in the case of memory globally, right? I could do this per cluster, like on this OpenShift on AWS cluster, I have $389 to realize in terms of savings. If I would order the memory, for instance, I will see different things. But if I go to namespace level, I see even more fine-grained. I can see that I am 70% CPU efficient in this namespace. I am 65% memory efficient in this other namespace. And if I click on one of these, the interesting thing is that I will see the container level recommendations. And those are recommendations I can act on, because they tell me in this container, if you want to optimize for cost and you look at the past 24 hours of data, then instead of 4 gigabytes of memory and 2 CPU cores, you should do 123% less of CPU and almost half the memory. So this means that I could be saving almost 50% of my cost for this container. And I have recommendations also for other time frames, 7 days and even 15 days, if this container will have lived that long. And I can get performance recommendations that tell me, if you don't want to run into bottleneck ever, then maybe you need to spend more. See that this is positive. And I see the box plots and telling me how my recommendation compares to the previous data. And the interesting thing is that these recommendations, all this information is also available through our API. And this time I want to point you to our API and integrations video, where I explained how to use the API, the cheat sheet, and all that. But this is not the only way to consume the resource automation recommendations and to automate with Ansible or with Puppet or some other automation tool. There's one more thing that we provide to our customers. While the resource optimization recommendations are available in cost management, we also make them available in another tool, Developer Hub. That's our developer platform that we offer to our customers. And it's typically used when you don't want your developers or some other member of your team to have any access whatsoever to the hybrid cloud console or to your cost management on-premise installation, and you want the hard separation of concerns, right? In that case, what happens is that through the API with some service account, Developer Hub is fetching the recommendations and the cost data from your cost management instance and displaying it in Developer Hub. This is Developer Hub. I have logged in as the guest user, and I have different APIs catalog and all that. This is my cost management plugin for Developer Hub. As you can see, I have exactly the same data that I had, and I can even export it. If I click here, we'll get a CSV or JSON. Even the API, the cost management API, is proxied through Developer Hub with Developer Hub authentication, completely isolated from the hybrid cloud console authentication and authorization mechanism. And I have also the recommendations, the optimization recommendations. You can see that even my filter, the same filters that I had, the currencies of that is available here. If I click, for instance, on this Grafana container, I can see that there's my current configuration and my recommendations, same as I had in the hybrid cloud console in cost management. But notice this button here. This button exists because we have an orchestrator plugin installed on Developer Hub. With this orchestrator plugin, what happens is that I can generate workflows in YAML, so it's a no-code solution that will allow me to do whatever I want with that. When I click on this button, and this button is only here for demo purposes, typically the workflow will run automatically, I can make that my workflow. In this case, the workflow is going to apply the recommendation, going to warn me. It's going to apply the recommendation on my cluster. So this pod is going to be resized now live without restarting the pod. See, it has run after a few seconds. I see it has gone to the cluster where this pod was executing. It has executed, it has right-sized the container, and now I can see that it succeeded. So now my pod is running with the right recommendation based on what I selected in the previous screen, but I can do different things. I could have said I want to have an orchestrator workflow that instead of patching my container, right-sizing it at on the spot, it will create a Jira ticket for someone to review in IT, or it will send a Slack message, and I can do that automatically. It doesn't need to have a click of a button. It could be something that's running in real time, and whenever it detects that there's a new recommendation that's, for instance, 10% different from the previous value, then it's going to trigger the workflow automatically, and it's going to send me that Slack message or that Jira ticket or that ServiceNow ticket, or it's going to send me an email or many of the things. This orchestrator plugin uses Sonata Flow workflows, and there's a myriad of possibilities. And all of that works with cost management and Developer Hub. The combination of these tools is what makes the magic happen. I hope you have enjoyed this video and you have learned something today. Here you have the references to our upstream open source projects and to the Developer Hub plugin, which will also be available soon from the Red Hat Developer Hub catalog. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed it.